Before the video gets started, I have a little announcement/update. So some of you may be aware I started a Patreon a while ago to try to raise money to create HorrorTube. And while I have some very dedicated folks showing some serious love there, I decided to join forces with Immunity Zero and Mother Creepypasta. If you don't know who they are, I will link their channels in the description box below. The three of us are gathering as many narrators, writers, and creators as we can to bring you tons of fresh Patreon-only content. The hope is that collectively, we can make HorrorTube a reality. When we reach the goal for the funds for the web designer and programmer, the Patreon will close as it will have served its purpose, and we will all have a happy, new, haunted home on HorrorTube. Thank you for your time. Now, let's get into the video. Warning: viewer discretion is advised. It seems the more disturbing the video is, the more you seem to like it. So if it makes me cringe, I have a feeling you will be pleased. Here are 12 stories from people who saw something they will never forget. Enjoy. While doing mission work in Juarez about a decade ago, driving the organization's truck from the supply depot to the construction site. On the highway, a van pulls on the on-ramp, speeds up ahead of me, and opens the back doors. Out came tumbling a half-dozen bodies, all with no hands, some without heads, others with extremely disfigured and destroyed faces. I accidentally ran over 2 of them. I got back to the worksite in a state of shock, and our site coordinator was asking how blood got on the front bumper. It took me a minute to formulate an answer. We cleaned it up before any of the extremely sheltered Midwestern teen volunteers or parents could see. The site coordinator gave me a bottle of water and sat me down in the shade. He went to the corner market, came back with a 6-pack, and drank with me until I got my bearings back. I watched a man kill himself outside of my apartment. He was a middle-aged military veteran who lived on the floor below me. My friend and I were up late studying, taking a break on the balcony, and we watched him go out to the parking lot, put a gun to his head, and pull the trigger. Is the only person I've ever seen die. He had anger issues and was always yelling at his wife. Didn't realize it was that bad. It really fucked with my head and led me to questioning my own stability. When I was about 8, I got invited over to a friend's house. First, I enjoyed it, but after some time it got pretty weird. When we went down to the cellar, his mother showed up, high and half naked, and got us some cookies. Completely stunned, I denied her offer and continued following my friend to the cellar. Down there, we played Beyblades until his brother, who was 6, showed up. He wanted to play with us, so my friend had this idea to handcuff his brother and treat him like a sex slave. He put his penis in his mouth and started pissing in it and all over his face. After some minutes of watching this and being terrified, I told him I had to leave because my mother said I should show up early at home. I was in such an uncomfortable situation that I had to think of it the whole day and never told anyone. I used to work at a McDonald's restaurant above a main train station. I was pretending to work one shift, but actually just staring out the window down onto the train platform. That's when I saw someone take a running leap in front of a train. They carried them off the track in pieces wrapped inside white sheets. I was paralyzed and couldn't move to stop looking, though I wished I would have. I saw someone get stabbed once. I was quite young, but had a mother who was pretty nonchalant about me watching violent films. So I grew up on lots of Arnold, Stallone, Van Damme films, and I thought I knew what someone being stabbed would look like. Nope. The knife didn't just slide in. It had a moment of give, and then, in my memory at least, there was a kind of pop sound. I read somewhere how your brain will insert a noise where there is none. I can't recall the scientific term at the time, but I assume that's what it was. It was the amount of blood. No slow trickle, just whoosh. Blood was everywhere in seconds. They didn't sort of stagger back. There was no Shakespearean soliloquy. They just looked down, and as they did, their legs buckled out, and they hit the ground. I remember screaming from both parties, and then I was dragged inside. When I was 17, I was placed on some medication for a severe head injury. This medication made me extremely suicidal, so my doctor decided to place me in the psych ward. They didn't have any room in the pediatric ward, so they put me in the adult ward. I walked into my room, which I was to share with another person, and there she was, a 60-year-old woman, naked, matted pubic hair, legs in the air, furiously masturbating and singing Daniel by Elton John. I later found out that she was schizophrenic and a prostitute, and that the cops had picked her up trying to fuck a statue. They moved my room later that day because I was freaked the hell out. On that same visit, a dude tackled me while I was coming out of the bathroom in my bathrobe and slippers and tried to lick my feet. While on a road trip with friends, stopped at a random highway exit rest stop plaza in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. We get a table at a Wendy's. At an adjacent table, there's an elderly couple. Both of them are over 80, sitting on one side of the table, facing two female mannequin sex dolls posed like they were joining them in the meal. We were high as fuck, and after we left, we came up with all sorts of wild theories as to what was going on. Maybe they lost their daughters. Maybe it was for security, to make it look like they were accompanied by younger people. Maybe they were at a mannequin sex doll convention. Fuck if I know. About a year ago, I walked into a public restroom to wash my hands, and there was a woman facing the mirror, brushing her hair, telling herself that she was pretty. I was too scared to tell her that she was in the men's restroom and ran away as fast as I could. I had to take a shit while on a road trip with my wife. We start arguing when she asks if I can hold it. We pull over at a shady-looking rest stop and I rush for the bathroom. I pull open the door, and there stand 3 men. Guy number 1 is jerking off in the corner. Guy number 2 is fucking guy number 3 in the ass. We are all now staring at each other for what felt like forever. When guy number 1 says, "It's all right, man. Come on in." I ran back to my car, told my wife to drive, and I ended up shitting on the side of the road a mile or two away. I witnessed a horrific accident in Big Sur. Bits of motorcyclists smeared and chunked all down the road, mixed in with motorcycle bits for about 100 meters. Head in the helmet, with some spine visible out of the mangled torso. Apparently, his front wheel clipped an oncoming fender, and he basically flipped straight over into the asphalt at about 45 miles per hour. Essentially, he was slammed into the pavement and exploded. Someone was puking on the shoulder. My friends and I had blankets in the car. We covered him up and waited for the cops to show up. About 2 years ago, me, a buddy, and our girlfriends decided to make a spur-of-the-moment trip down to the coast of Texas. We arrived about 2 a.m. at this run-down motel that was right on the beach. As we're climbing the stairs, we hear a motorcycle flying down the highway toward the overpass just in front of the motel. Just as my buddy was saying, "Man, that guy's hauling ass," we hear a loud crash. Both of us knew he had cracked. We immediately drop the cooler and tear off to the overpass in search of this guy. This is where it gets really disturbing to me. Buddy decides to run toward the other side of the overpass to stop the cars. As he is doing so, these 2 dudes run up to where I'm at and ask what happened, so I tell them. As I'm telling one, the other reaches into the dude's pocket that is splattered and wrapped around the fucking light pole and takes his wallet, looks at me and says, "Fuck it, I say. He don't need it anymore." I stood in disbelief until the other dude announced that the cops were on their way, and they hauled ass out of there. I used to work at a restaurant in the same building as a super shady dive bar located right across from the city's main park. Now it's one of those first nice days of spring, so naturally there were a lot of people in the park. We were dead slow and taking turns going to the bar to hang out on the porch. So me and one of the bar folks are chatting, and I noticed this picnic table, partially blocked by the park wall, with a couple of park dudes hanging around it. One of the guys is sitting at the table, making these hideous grimaces. When he traded places with another guy, I figured out what was going on. There was a woman under the table giving them head. I go next door to tell my coworkers, and for about the next half hour, we watch this spectacle from the bar porch. It's pretty much surrounded by kids playing, people hanging out on blankets, throwing frisbees, and not one person noticed what was going on. Finally, one of the cooler park bums, we'll call him Dirty Feet Cheese Bill, because that's what we called him, strolls up to bum a cigarette from one of the picnic table guys, sees this tableau, does the about face, nope, walks over to us. "Man, the guy on the table eating her out. That shit's nasty." He bums a smoke and leans on the wall watching for a minute, stench blinding us, smoking his cigarette. "Ain't nobody say nothing? That's something else." Well, somebody must have eventually noticed because the cops descended on them and broke up the party. This may shock you, but I didn't even choose the worst of this grouping. Something else that may interest you, I lost count as to how many times I had to re-record the phrase, "Dirty Feet Cheese Bill," because let's be honest, it isn't every day you come across that one. I hope you enjoyed these stories, We'll be back on Tuesday with part 4 of Save Me from the Dark by Brian Morrow, if you are indeed following that story. And next Saturday, we'll have a fresh Serial Killer Saturday for you. Until then, see you next time.